you're never promised tomorrow. So whether it's going for that bike ride, hanging out with your family, like watching the sunset, booking that plane ticket to go on that trip that you've wanted to. Life is short, and yeah, we should just try to fill it with meaningful chapters in our life that bring us happiness and joy and make an impact on those around us.
Welcome to Outside is Magic, a podcast about the intersection of creativity and outdoors. I'm your host, Christopher San Augustine, a creative director and founder of Broken Coastal, a studio rooted in storytelling, design, and community. This week, I'm joined by Jenn Levo. Jenn is a designer and athlete who's always found ways to connect creativity with the outdoors. We talk about the balance between sport, art, and the lessons that come from perseverance and what it means to live fully in the short time we have. Before we dive in, if you're enjoying these conversations, the best way to support the show is to subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with a friend. All right, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Jenn Levo. Thanks, Jenn, for jumping on the podcast. I wanted to start off and ask you, what's keeping you energized right now? Is there any sparks in your life that are keeping you inspired or energized?
Goodness, that's a good opening question there, Chris. Similar to chatting before we got on, it's just I think like right now in the summer, just trying to make the most of like the fleeting time that we have here in the Pacific Northwest to get out and do stuff. And, outside of like work and other like creative pursuits, just trying to squeeze in the time that I can to get like on the water to go fishing, to get on the water to go supping, to get a bike ride in, to go hiking, to try to get like some bike packing in. Like just today, I was looking at my calendar, just being like, what about like this couple days? Can I do like an overnight or there or that? And so just trying to like, yeah, energize by just summertime. So
Yeah. Do you find it hard to find balance in trying to juggle all these things that you want to do, plus, having a partner and work and all of that?
100%. I mean, I always joke that, people suffer seasonal depression. I actually suffer seasonal depression in the summertime more than the wintertime, just because I think it's just, the sun is shining and I want to get out there and I want to do stuff. Also, my partner is a wildlife biologist for the Forest Service. And generally when like fires flare up, like she's occupied doing that. And so it's just really trying to that's another aspect of that kind of like we gotta go 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 because like there's not any fires right now that she's like working on, so just trying to do things like together because I know that like in a month or so or even maybe next week like we won't have that ability because she'll be like off working and I'll be like the manager of the household and the two dogs and everything,
Yeah.
trying to keep that all together.
Do you ever get to join on the field work with her?
Not so much, but every once in a while she'll have a duty on a fire lookout up here at Odell Butte. And so I'll always kind of like try to go up there and spend some time with her when we can. Like if she's working back to back shifts, like spend the night up there and just, get the benefits of a fire lookout tower from a civilian perspective.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a hard time finding balance. Especially in the summer when there's too many things happening, like 3 cool events on a Wednesday or something. You have to make yeah, you have to make compromises, and I almost feel like you let people down because you can't show up, and yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, sometimes like the winter is nice because there's just a little less going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I still feel like I keep a pretty packed schedule even in the winter, but I just feel like there's less pressure to like try to do all the things.
Yeah. Are you very time oriented? Are you able to time block things out, or are you just a mess?
I feel like I'm pretty time oriented just because I have to be in the winter. So, for example, it's like I do ski patrol here at Willamette Pass. It's a local mountain that's about like 35 minutes away from me. So I have a lot of responsibilities for that on the weekends. And also with training, like sometimes during the weekdays. So it's like I'll have pockets of time that like I have to dedicate to like work or like other projects and that stuff. And that way I know that it's going to get done. Because if I just leave it to the winds, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, totally. I hear Willamette Pass is a little hidden gem.
Actually, can you bleep that out on the
Well,
the podcast so
yeah, we
nobody
can bleep
knows
that out.
about it? We don't need people to come.
Yeah, the parking lot's too small for sure.
Yeah. Good, deep snow conditions there when
Yeah.
the timing's right.
Yeah, totally. Well, I am a terrible skier, so I will not be going.
I'm a terrible skier, but a decent snowboarder. So I try to ski, but terrible. So
Okay, here's another good one. Looking back, is there any events in your life that looking back kind of stand out to you that it was could have been the potential origin of your creative spark, your creative life? Something you maybe didn't think about when you were younger, but looking back, you're like, oh, damn, that teacher or that thing I did was kind of the start of this all.
also another great heavy hitting question. I don't think there was like one like linchpin watershed like moment between a teacher or anything like that. I think I've always been a creative and artistic person, but the funny thing for me is that my brother was always pegged as the artistic child and I was pegged as the athlete. And so I think the whole time growing up, my parents just thought I was like the basic child and he got like all the attention. And so a lot of the artistic and the creative things didn't really get put in front of me necessarily. But I will say that I think a lot of that changed when it came to my parents' perspective of me. I did have a teacher that during a parent teacher conference was like, they were like, oh, Jen's pretty creative. And my parents were like, wait, what are you talking about? We thought she was just like the basic kid. So because of that, I think I got a little bit more opportunities, shall I say, like in that field. It's not like anything was kept from me, but I was able to, I think, like foster some of the creativity that I had in ways that I wasn't able to share it necessarily before. And like for me, like I will say there was one linchpin moment. It wasn't a person or anything like that, but I was super into Major League Baseball growing up and I would like redraw the logos. And I just thought they were
Cool.
so interesting. And the moment that I realized in the mid 80s that the Milwaukee Brewers logo was a baseball mitt, but it was also the letter N and the letter B with the baseball on the inside rocked my world. And I think that's like when I was just like, oh, you can have like through design, like have all these different messages that mean essentially kind of the same thing, but you can have these stories within just like icons and representation. And I just remember that being like a little bit of a guiding light for just how amazing design can be.
That's a good one. I remember seeing the FedEx logo for the first time, and I didn't notice that arrow at all. Not until years and years later.
You're like, how long have I been just staring at this thing? And it just like hit me like a bolt out of the blue.
Yeah, that's super cool. So it sounds like athletics was pretty important in your most of your life, actually.
Yeah, yeah. It's always been something that, while I strive for creative like pursuits, I always strive as well to use my body and just, I think about sometimes like the creativity of snowboarding, like on a powder day when you just have like a blank canvas in front of you and you can paint any kind of line you want with how you move your
Yes.
board. Like that's also creative expression that just like combines athletic.
Yeah, totally. I did 5 months of career coaching recently that sadly ended. And something that kept on coming up was BMX and just how it shaped my life and how so many things can get traced back to BMX from getting the bike and then you get to slowly start exploring out of the neighborhoods. You go a little further, and then you hop on a train and you're traveling to new cities and you're meeting new people and you're building jumps and you're looking at the geometrical shapes of buildings and how you can ride them. And it's so interesting. And recently I built up a BMX again and I'm making it a priority to just pedal around or take the puppy out or go to the dirt jumps with friends. And it's been really cool to kind of nurture that. I don't know if it's the origin of my creativity, but it's definitely played a huge role in my life. And yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, no, I think and I also think that whether it's like those meditative like tasks, whether it's, cycling or snowboarding or hiking or something like that, like how your brain can just like wander and explore different ideas and concepts and it then taps like a certain level that you just don't get sitting in front of a computer all day.
Yeah. Is there a sport that you do or an activity that you do where your mind doesn't wander and you're really just present and focused on what's ahead of you or behind you?
I think that back when I played softball and soccer, like, way back in the day, I don't think that those are necessarily sports that you can necessarily zone out on, especially if you're, like, playing third base. It's right for, like, people to smack line drives, like, right at your face. So you should probably
Yeah.
be pretty tapped into what's going on, but it's I don't know, it's kind of interesting you move from, like, the team sports aspect of things, which I think, like, a lot of youth in America, that's, like, their first introduction to sports and being athletic and teamwork and stuff like that, but when you get older and you can choose your own avenues, I think it's quite interesting how it's like there's less team sports and more of that kind of like solo pursuit where you can tap out. And even if like you go hiking with a friend, like, sometimes you're chatting and then other times you're just in your space in your zone. It's
Yeah.
magical. So,
Yeah. When I first discovered fly fishing, I found that it was an activity where my mind wouldn't wander as much. I don't know if I'm focused on the task of fly fishing or I'm just immersed in the experience of it. Versus mountain biking or BMX, I could be hitting a massive jump and thinking about taxes or something, you know. Fly fishing, I mean, as of now, is kind of like my meditative space.
yeah, I would agree. I'm like, maybe if I thought more about like fishing while I'm fishing, I would actually catch more. But I just love being in the water and, sometimes just thinking about like what a fish is probably thinking about. And then my mind just like goes a million miles a minute. So,
Yeah. So at some point, sounds like you decided to go to SCAD
hmm,
in art school.
yeah,
Yeah. How was that experience?
but it was a great experience. Kind of like thinking back to being like a youth and whatnot, I actually wanted to go into meteorology when I was in high school. And so my educational classes were it was a lot of science, it was a lot of math, and I love science, but I really do not like math. And I was like, why do I want to pay all this money to go to college and like hate half the things that I'm doing? And at that time, I was just creating logos for different clubs in our school, doing posters and flyers for different like groups. And but I didn't know that graphic design was actually a career. And so my brother, he's an architect, and he was at that time going to architecture school at the University of Cincinnati. And he's just like, I have a friend who does graphic design. Like, you should come and hang out with her for the day, like, kind of go to her classes. And so that's what I did. I did just kind of like a college shadow day. And it was fun hanging out with her. Like, there was this lady, her name was Becky Rule. She was an Olympic diver. And she was like sitting at her table. She was also in the graphic design program. So I was probably just like a little woo-wooed by like famous Olympian. But I'm like, the stuff that she was doing for class is stuff that I was doing for fun all the time. And so I realized I'm like, oh shoot, like I could actually do this as a career and also as a plus going back to the athletics aspect of things. Like SCAD was one of the only universities in the US that had like at that time NCAA like athletic program as well as a really good
Cool.
arts program. So I could kind of have my cake and eat it too. I was recruited for softball and soccer, but I ended up on the rowing team for the whole
What?
4 years
That's
that I was
cool.
there. So I was able to get an amazing art education with a degree in graphic design, a minor in photography, and also, yeah, 4 years of athletic sports.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really cool. Is there anything? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, a thing that appealed to me about SCAD, where a lot of other art colleges, they'd be so focused on like the fine arts of like painting and gouache and all these whatnots. But I appreciated how with SCAD, it was just like there are these skill sets, and this is how you actually make it a career. And that was one thing that, yeah, a lot of other universities weren't really putting out there, how to make art a livable, yeah, a livable aspect as a career.
Yeah, when I lived in New York and I'd be at these kind of fancy studios, they would always send producers and creative directors over to SCAD to do some talent scouting for potential I don't know, interns or junior designers. I don't know what they did with them.
Yeah.
I think they were probably ended up being like interns for a while, and then yeah. Is there something you learned from there that you still carry with you today?
I think a lot is just kind of like perseverance of stuff. I remember that it's funny, I feel like the classes that stuck the most with me and the professors that stuck the most with me were not necessarily in my major. I had an art history major that I absolutely loved and a photography major that I absolutely loved. And I think one thing that I loved about them is that before I had them as professors, like everyone was like, "Oh, they're so hardcore. They're so like unfair. Like this stuff is just too hard." And I was just like, "Well, I'm gonna get an A in that course, and I'm gonna make it happen." And so, just like the perseverance of just like working really hard to take these expectations that people have, and maybe it's stereotypes about certain professors, but just being able to use the skills that you have, like the dedication that you can put towards something, and also just like gaining that knowledge and coming out of the other side. And yeah, it was a lot of hard work. But like you made it, you did it. And I think that that's like a life lesson, whether it's in like current careers right now or like sports, events, anything like that. Like I think that that's a lesson that's just like perseverance and the dedication. Before you know it, hopefully you're through the storm and you did what you needed to do.
Yeah. That's cool. And so how did you end up in Portland? I didn't ask you where you're from. Did you
Oh,
grow up in Portland or
originally from a small town in rural Ohio, Southern Ohio. And then, yeah, I went to SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, Savannah, Georgia. I graduated from there, worked for the university for a couple of years doing the graphic design and also running our intramurals program for the university. And then just kind of came out to the Pacific Northwest for like a work conference and just fell in love with the quality of life out here. And so ended up like quitting the job that I had at SCAD and moving out here without really any job prospects, without knowing anybody. But just that idea of like, could after work, you could go hiking in the gorge, like living in Portland. You could, as an overnight, like go to the coast if you wanted to after work. You could do all these things so easily, whether it was on a weekday, on a weekend, and I'm like, this is like what I would pay for vacation. I'm like, why spend all of my life working really hard to save money to travel, to save time for time off when I can just make my everyday kind of like a vacation. And so yeah, packed up my bags, I moved out and that was like 2007 and yeah, I lived in Portland for about 16 years and then I've lived now in Central Oregon for about 6.
okay. And at what point did you end up starting to work for Vanilla and Speedvagen?
I did that probably I think it was from about trying to do reverse math. 2011 is when I started working there. So before there, I just worked for like a small like collegiate promotions marketing company and was getting into bike racing at the time and was a graphic designer, was doing a lot of kit designs for friends and flyers for different races. And yeah, when the opening came at Vanilla for like front end girl that did not girl, so front end person that did graphic design and then handled all the invoicing, sweeping the floors, replacing the toilet paper, ordering parts, like pretty much everything that was an actual bike building or painting of the bikes. I applied and got it, and it kind of changed my life a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious on what it was like working there. It sounds like you did a little bit of everything. Did it last? Was that your whole time there, or did it end up transitioning into more of a designer role? Or
It pretty much was the whole time I was working there. So similar to having like college professors that everyone was like, oh, this person's so hard and they're so
yeah,
hard to like work with. Sasha definitely had like a reputation about him. Not that he was necessarily hard, but he has some opinions about things. And so I think a lot of it, especially when it came to design, was just trying to figure out how he saw the world and how to translate that into working with customers and then designing like paint schemes. I mean, I did so many things for the whole time I was there. Eventually, they moved ordering over to somebody else. So I wasn't like ordering bike tubes and rear derailleurs and things like that, which
yeah.
I don't think that was necessarily my strong suit.
Yeah. It's like, Jen, you ordered the wrong derailleur.
I mean, like, I knew bikes a little, but not at the level that they did at Vanilla and like Speedwagon. So it definitely was a very, very steep learning curve. I think Sasha was going to fire me in that first year, but persevered and made it through.
Yeah.
And, you know, we became like good friends by the end of it. We were doing a lot of traveling. I left Speedwagon in like 2019, and we were doing a lot of traveling kind of all over the world at that point for like our fit trips, just working with customers everywhere, and so many great memories, so many great bikes that we put out in the world that I mean, still when I see photos of them from folks on social media and whatnot, they light up my heart.
Yeah. I remember first moving to Portland and seeing the Vanilla and Speedwagon bikes, and it was definitely the holy grail for me. I feel like they were ahead of their time when it came to, obviously their bikes were amazing, but I think the design and paint and just the brand in general was way ahead of its time.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it was, I think, one of the Oregon Manifest things. I don't know whether it was that or just like a Portland, kind of what the Made show is now. Uh, that it was probably like 2009 or something like that. And I remember seeing like the vanillas and just like my jaw dropping to the floor. They were some of the most like gorgeous bikes. And it's kind of funny for what I do now working at a Hydro Flask, where I never knew I had a niche apparently for like a Speedwagon and vanilla. I designed paint schemes to go on round pieces of steel tubing. At Hydro Flask, I designed paint schemes that go on round pieces of steel.
That's funny.
So if you are a person, you do round pieces of steel, you need paint schemes, like apparently I'm your person.
Yeah, that's funny. Were you a part of the cyclocross team?
Yeah, brief. I'll say I was part of the B team.
Okay.
But I still was out there at like the races. I got to some like good levels, went to nationals one year. And it was a great team to be a part of. And also just the immersion of being able to design our kits, design our bikes, and just the full front of like everything that like put together the complete package. It was definitely an enjoyable project to work on.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were a part of that because again, I feel like the Speedwagon, yeah, was ahead of its time even when it came to cyclocross as well. Like you guys showed up so cool.
And it was also, I really enjoyed doing like the kitty cross and putting that on for free
Yeah.
for like all the folks in Portland. And it was always kind of cool. Like one year you see like a little like ripper, and then a couple years later they're just like tearing it up in like the juniors category. And you're just like, I remember when they needed help putting their Strider bike over a barricade. But yeah, I mean, I will agree that for the full front of like all the design and the bikes and everything, but also the idea of like giving back to the community, like there's so much that like I reminisce and I miss about the cyclocross scene during that period of time. That I haven't necessarily found like here in Bend, but just that the community aspect and making it a place where like people can bring their small children and there's like an event for them, and it can just be like an all day family affair.
Maybe you can convince Speedwagon to do a reunion race or something.
Oh, that'd be fun. I feel like
Get the band back together.
a large portion of the team lives here in Bend, so probably wouldn't be that hard.
Yeah. I would say the Portland Trophy Cup is definitely filling that void in our area right now. When you go to their events, it just blows my mind how they can just rally the community, and yeah, it's so cool.
I love that. I mean, there's so many times I do have FOMO in the fall when it's Portland Trophy Cup time because I do enjoy that series, and I'm always like itching. I'm like, okay, if I leave work at this time, like when can I make it up there and everything? I mean, just the scene of everyone gathering and racing and then hanging out, and then especially for like the men's races when it's darker, just
Yeah.
the lights, the ramps, the debauchery, the fun, the heckling.
Yeah. It's a couple people have been bringing out speakers and lights, and they'll just put them out in the field. And I'll just be walking around, and you just hit around this corner, and you just start hearing this music, and then the lights. It's amazing. Definitely worth the trip if you come back out. So going from Speedvagen to Hydro Flask, I imagine it was a huge jump going from what sounds like a very unstructured, loose kind of probably really, really creative but really a lot of hard, long days, I imagine. And then going to Hydro Flask where it's, I imagine, much more rigid, but probably more of a 9 to 5 where you get to, leave after work and enjoy life and not worry about the next day.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also kind of funny. I was thinking about this not too terribly long ago. I mean, obviously, so I do graphic design in the product side, which means everything that's kind of like customer facing on our product, which could go from like the colors that we introduce every season to special limited editions, to special SMUs, special markups for like different retailers like Whole Foods Market. And it's such a weird thing because it's not at Speedwagon, I definitely felt like, "Oh, if we don't get X amount of more, like, sales or new clients," there's so much that just felt like it was riding on my shoulders to, like, bring in new business and respond to, emails. I mean, I did all of our customer service and everything too, so I'm really just trying to help people through the whole bike process, and I felt, like, responsible for, keeping the doors open, which just felt like a large, weight on the shoulders, and at Hydro Flask, there's just so many factors at play that while, yes, I can influence whether somebody, like, buys a bottle or not because they like a color or they don't, or they like a design or they don't, so much of it is out of my hands and into other people's hands, whether it's, like, the marketing, like, stories that are told or the price that gets set from tariffs and whatnot. So, in some ways, it is nice and relaxing to just not feel that constant stress. I mean, there definitely is stress at work, but it is a lot easier, when 5 o'clock comes to just like close the computer down and go on with my day and attack it the next day. Where I feel like at Speedwagon, it was definitely, you were living and breathing stuff all the time.
Yeah. Was there anything you had to learn real quickly that you didn't expect when you started working there?
At Hydro Flask,
Yeah. Like using Slack or something?
not using Slack. I will say one thing I didn't expect to learn when I started at Vanilla: Excel spreadsheets. Nothing in
Okay.
my life had prepared me for Excel spreadsheets. One thing that I am currently learning at Hydro Flask, which sometimes is part of my stress, but it's all good at the end of the day, is Keyshot. Are you
Keisha.
familiar with Keyshot?
No.
Basically, it's a way to make very photorealistic renders. You start with CAD software and then you enter in like materials and stuff like that. It's a real easy way to bring, I don't want to say easy because I find it product to life in sexy kind of shots that are of product that doesn't necessarily exist yet. And it sells things better than
Hmm.
Illustrator renders. I did not expect that I would have to learn. A lot of industrial designers use it, but I'm learning it. Things are coming along. So you can teach old dogs new tricks.
Are you going to be starting to incorporate AI into that workflow? Because I know that's a pretty powerful thing as well as doing product renders.
Yeah, so far we haven't necessarily looked into that. And that's a very good question. And it's also interesting. I mean, there's so much
Yeah.
that I think about what is out there in the world as far as AI and everything that AI kind of mines. And I don't know how it does when it comes to intellectual like property of stuff, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So I'm just thinking like, let's say I wanted to do a render of a color in a bottle that we have planned for like fall 2027. Like I don't necessarily want to put that out there into the world. So it's just like uh easily accessible by anybody else for anything to mine. So I'm sure there's like
Yeah.
workarounds, but yeah, we haven't really played with that so much. I am curious though about
Yeah.
AI in design. I think it can be used as a tool for good, but I am reluctant to make it any kind of crutch in anything that I do.
Yeah. Same. I think it's just going to be another tool in the toolbox. I've I've kind of recently committed to learning a little bit on the deeper side of it because it gets really deep to get the really high end renders. There's this software called Comfy UI, and you have to download it and install it through Terminal on your Mac. It's kind of complicated. And then you have to download all these different patches. And there's all these different LLMs, which are trained models that you plug in. and it's all node based, so you have to connect the dots to the thing. But that's how these 3D artists or AI artists are putting out really amazing content. It's not just like prompts in ChatGPT or Midjourney. It's through a much more complex model. I do know, I'm not going to name names, but I do know some really big companies that use it, and they do like concept work with it, and they do crazy thousands and thousands of concepts. They're just able to just iterate thousands and thousands of different products, which is just super crazy to me.
It is. And then you look at the kind of, I mean, granted, that was probably someone's job to do those concepts before. And so it's a cost savings measure for the company. Yeah, it's just, it's kind of interesting that it can definitely make things more efficient. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah. And definitely the person, whoever's doing it, it's like a new job. So I imagine the person who was doing the concept work is still doing the concept work, but they're just using a new tool set now. Because you still have to have the eye and the creativity. So yeah, it's interesting. Definitely interesting. I haven't brought up AI too much in these podcasts because it's a touchy subject, but I personally use it a lot for admin work. That's where if it can relieve admin work, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I think like an interesting thing about AI without going into too big of a deep dive is just trying to inform, I guess, society of like what's real and what's not real. I mean, there's
Yes.
a lot of times like, I'll be on social media and I'll see a thing and I'm like, that's crazy. Like, look at that cloud doing this like fire NATO thing. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And I'll start reading
Yeah.
some things we were like AI. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I see it now. Like, this doesn't check out. There's like all these things that are inconsistent with it. But it's the more we use it, the smarter it's getting. And
Yeah.
it's just that kind of literacy that an education that I think we all need to do of like what's real and what's fake, what's
It's
real
super
news and what's
scary.
fake news. And because we just can't rely on things, photos. And
Yeah, it's really scary. There's this, I don't know what I would call her. She's like a dietitian for athletes. And she's always on my Instagram feed because I think she's blowing up and she's just putting out tons and tons of content. But the more and more I've seen it recently, I can't tell. I can't tell if it's real or not. I'm like, does she really light the scene that well and have a makeup artist come and work? Or maybe she does. Maybe she does. Or maybe it's not. Everything is just kind of touched up in AI and the backgrounds are swapped. I'm kind of leaning towards it is that. But it's interesting just yeah, you have to be kind of vigilant these days about it.
yeah, and the same
It's
way that
wild.
like back in the day you were like, oh, that photo is totally Photoshop. Now we're just like, oh,
Yeah.
it's totally AI.
Yeah. Do you feel I'm in the camp that I feel there's going to be a lot of AI noise and slop in that creating real human connections and making things that are really authentic and imperfect are going to kind of have a renaissance, and it's going to come back and we're going to be
Yeah,
wanting those things.
100%. I mean, things that we're looking at, like, kind of, we have to do a lot of trend research at Hydro Flask, which is another thing, going back to your other question. Like, a lot of times at, like, Speedvagen, we would pick paint palettes based upon, like, how we were feeling and just a lot of, like, insight that we were gathering from the world around us. And with, like, the water bottle machine being as big as it is right now, with, like, the other big players like Awala and Stanley, and Yeti. Like, there's so much that's just like driven in trends. And so I did not think probably 6 years ago that I'd just be reading trend reports on the regular, but here we are. But one of the things that we're seeing like more of for 2025 through like 2027, we're calling it kind of glimmers. And it's basically people connecting to those, for some of us, like my age, like it's nostalgia. For like the Gen Z, it's like trying to experience a thing that they've never experienced before. We're seeing, the resurgence of film cameras. We're seeing the research of like vinyl records. I think people now are going back to away from vaping pens and e-cigarettes to hand rolling cigarettes. And so all these very like tangible things that are not perfect, that regard you to use your hands to play with them. I mean, like, just look at like the rise in print publishing, where before it was like everything was going to online. There's so many great outdoor magazines, especially right now, that are on the printed page that people are paying top dollar for good printing, for good stories, good photos. And so I do think we're seeing a little bit of that shift back from AI to this very tangible aspects of life and connecting with folks IRL. I mean, I say that as we are like Zooming right now, but
Yeah.
if I was in town, I'd swing on by. So,
Yeah. No, I'm glad to hear that. That's awesome. Do you have any advice for anyone that might feel stuck in their job or just creatively?
um, well, similar to you, you said you went to a career coach.
Hmm.
When I was at Speedvagen, I was getting like some itchy feet to think about like what that next step was. I too went to a career coach, and I would recommend that to really anybody if you have the funds and the ability and the means to do it, because it's kind of like going to a therapist for
Yes.
what you enjoy doing with your life and what brings you joy. And if you can what you do for fun, which fun shouldn't always be your job and like vice versa kind of thing, but like, yeah, what's going to make you feel good at the end of the day? And so she helped me really kind of work through some things and lay out like just a better strategy, because I kind of felt like I was swimming in a lot of different directions, not knowing like which was the right direction to go. And she helped me focus on some stuff and work through the whole process of applying. And I ended up here in a location that I wanted to live at, with a job I wanted to have. And so it was scary, like jumping and making that change, especially when you've been with like a company for 8 years and you enjoy the people that you work with. But sometimes you just have to, pivot for your own creativity and your own sanity. And life is short, so you need
Yeah.
some more chapters in your book.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to jump, make it happen. This podcast is very much a continuation of my career coaching experience. It's really what it is. I have a very small criteria of what I think will make this podcast successful, and
Mhm.
it's really just one, to have a good conversation like we're having now, and then two, if this conversation can help one other person, I feel like it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
thinking back to, I think one of your other guests was just talking about, she was just trying to find like what that next career path was, and just like inviting people out for coffee and like picking
yeah.
their brain. It's just in some ways, yeah, a lot like that, but everyone gets to share, everyone gets to get those glimmers of feedback from the folks that you have. So thanks for taking the opportunity to record this and put it out there for the world.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being a part of it. Let's see. All right, now I'm a little lost in my thoughts on that. Is there anything you like used to really care about in your work that no longer matters to you, or you just learn to let go?
Oh, I feel like everything always matters all the time, but at some point you gotta let the ship sail. You gotta
Yeah.
sometimes like I'll see a project, like even now, like a bottle will come out and I'm like, I sometimes don't want to look at them. I mean, I appreciate them. I'm happy with the work that I did, but there's always like one thing when I'm like, that color just, or like, should have done this instead. And so it is hard sometimes to just let things go. But I'm also trying to play with the fact that life is short and there's a lot of things that I want to do and that I can focus on, and it can't always be like 100%. Sometimes 95% is okay.
Yeah, totally. I had a hard time with that when I first got out of school because I wanted everything to be so perfect. But I moved to New York and kind of got thrown into the ringer. And I learned real quick that nothing was precious and that you had to just do the work and do the best you can. You know, if the project gets killed or the direction gets changed to something completely different, it's just part of it. I feel like they definitely don't teach you that in school.
Oh, that's 100%. They do not teach you that. I mean, there were some projects that definitely were a little bit on the chopping block with all the tariff stuff that happened not too long ago. And I've had some things that have been like killed, and it's a little bit like you kick that kid of mine off of the boat and they're drowning, and I can't really save them. I'm happy of that kid. I wish it the best of luck in the trash bin. Yeah, she's just got to let stuff go. And so I'm still trying to work on that one myself.
Yeah, that's funny. I just, as we were talking, I've been throwing around the idea of making zines around the creative process and all of that. I think it'd be real fun just to make a bunch of zines. And I think it'd be funny to make a zine that's all about what I didn't learn in school.
I feel like that's not just a zine, that's like a dictionary of everything,
Yeah.
the school of hard knocks, just the stuff that you learn as you go. But I think you should totally do that. Also, we were saying before, like people like tangible things. They like zines. They like things that were like printed on real paper with a fax machine at Kinko's at like 5:30 in the morning. So
No, it's happening. I have a whole Figma deck kind of already going. It's definitely going to happen.
yeah.
Speaking of Figma, do you use Figma?
I do not use Figma.
Okay.
I know I have some coworkers that do and rave about it. I just haven't been at a place necessarily where I've like taken that deep dive into it, but it is in the peripheral. So do you
Yeah,
use
check it
it?
out.
Oh, well, obviously you're doing your zine on that
Yeah.
and everything.
Well, I do design in it, but I don't really use it as a design tool. I use it more for mapping out ideas, putting together mood boards, decks, and all that. But you have this infinite canvas and you can make different art boards.
Yeah. I
So
think
it's pretty amazing.
one that we use at work, that my boss at Hydro Flask, she used to work at Adidas and like Nike, and she brought with her the idea, oh, not the idea, the app kind of Miro. Do you know
Yeah, I've
Miro?
heard of that one too.
And
Yeah.
so we use that a lot, and that's nice because you can, yeah, infinite mood boards. And if you need to, you can export things like from pages
Yeah.
out to like PDFs. So I don't know how similar, how different those things are, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I have all these between Pinterest, and I'm still on Tumblr.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I
Nice.
have so many databases of like mental and storage and inspiration that there's like a lot of things. It's like if I have like some things in my garage, some things in my drawer, some things in my closet, like at some point, I would love to have everything all together in one massive like archive, but that's not gonna happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. Dang, I'm sorry, I just blanked. I had a really good question. I'm gonna have to edit this. What was it? Oh, yeah. How do you stay organized? Do you have a good process down?
I am a paper notebook note taker.
Cool.
And I pretty much start out every week with work to do and then personal to do, and just try to get as much, kind of done. And there's some weeks where it's like pretty much everything copies over to the next thing. But, I tried like apps on my phone and everything. And I don't know, whenever I pick up my phone, it's just so easy to like go off on an Instagram thing, or I don't know how many times I'll pick up the phone and 20 minutes have gone by. I'm on Instagram, and what I really wanted to do was set my clock to an earlier time so I could get to bed, like wake up to go like work out or something like that. So I am trying to always use those aspects of technology less and use my brain and my hands and paper more. Also, there's so many times we'll be like, what was that thing that I needed? And if I don't have like my notebook with me, which I often don't, but it's just like using the photographic memory of like reading that list in my head if I can just like picture it. And that's like a priceless thing, that instead of just relying on your phone to tell you what you need to do.
Yeah. Do you keep all of your notebooks or do you throw them away?
I keep them. I have like an
Yeah.
archive of in my garage, which there's no like rhyme or reason. They're just kind of like in some shoe boxes,
Yeah.
and I don't think I've gone through them anytime recently, but they're there if I need to. What about you? What's your system of organization?
Lately, it's been just like a notepad. I like the notepad. I do use a notebook too, but I like the notepad just so I can rip off the next day or whatever. But I'm in search. I'm looking for the perfect notepad and I don't see it. So I'm probably gonna end up making one.
Yeah. It's just
I think I'm gonna end up buying one of those little spiral bounding machines because they're not too expensive. And I think I'm gonna make some custom stamps. Some nice like 4x4 custom stamps that'll have different things like lines or grids, and then I'll just make my own. Each week I can make my own little thing.
is it gonna open from the middle like a book? Is it gonna flip from the top?
It's gonna be like, like a calendar has this little spiral at the top, so you'd be able to fold it over. Yeah,
I love that idea. I'm definitely a person, while my main notebook opens like a book, so many times, like, I hate spiral bound notebooks because that metal thing is always in where I wanna have my hand.
that's funny.
Like, I know, like, Moleskine does, like, I think they call them, like, reporter, like, notebooks that flip up, but I start getting into the weeds about the binding on it, like, the paper, how thick the paper is, what
Yeah,
pen I use, like, too thin of a piece of paper, or else my thick pen, like, bleeds through, and then I can't use the other side of it. Like, I could go down so many. I've got opinions, Chris. I've got it.
yeah, I love that. I finally found mine, and it does have a spiral, but it's this company called Rollban. I think they're German, and it's really nice. It's like a grid, and then it has like these kind of clear folders in the back so you can drop things in. But I used to keep my notebooks, but I moved so much from the Bay Area to New York to here. I ended up just tossing them when I left New York. And ever since then, they're just not as precious to me. I do think there'll be a time in my life where I'll pick it back up again and I'll want to archive those. Maybe when I own a house one day or something. But for now,
I feel like it's always that constant battle. I had a friend, like, back in high school. She's like, "My goal in life is to have everything that I need or want that can just fit into a milk crate, and I can just bring that milk crate with me and just
yeah,
be, like, untethered to things." And I totally get that, and I admire that, but also, like, I like surrounding myself with stuff that makes me happy and, like,
yeah,
brings back memories, or, like, gives me joy, and so I'm constantly at this battle of, like, letting stuff go and then also trying not to turn too much into a hoarder, because I think definitely that would come across if
yeah. I'm a big believer that environment is stronger than willpower is the phrase. So it's like you have to create like a creative environment for yourself. Yeah. Before we go, I'm going to ask you my closing question, which is I just want to ask you if there's a belief that anchors you in your life or work that you think somebody should hear.
I will end in the words of, the great country singer Tim McGraw, with, "Live Like You're Dying."
Yeah.
Oh, great songs. I mean, he didn't write it, but, I always tear up a little bit, but just that aspect of, like, every day, like, you're never promised tomorrow. So whether it's going for that bike ride, hanging out with your family, like watching the sunset, booking that plane ticket to go on that trip that you've wanted to. Life is short, and yeah, we should just try to fill it with meaningful chapters in our life that bring us happiness and joy and make an impact on those around us. And so, yeah, I feel like a lot of people would make some different choices if they knew that it was, like, their last day. So,
Yeah.
live like you're dying.
I'm going to piggyback on that before we go and say that for the people listening, that they should give somebody a call who they haven't talked to in a long time and yeah, just have a conversation and catch up and make sure that they know that you still think of them.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a long drawn out thing, even if it's just, you leave a message on the machine, or you even just text them, just being, "I saw something today, made me think of you," like, brings a smile to someone's face, and so I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. I think those interactions have a huge ripple effect too for everybody. Well, thank you so much. This was an awesome conversation.
Yeah, likewise.
Really appreciate it. And that's our show for today. If you like this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend. It all really helps out. If you have any questions about creativity, process, or anything we talked about, please drop a comment. I'd love to hear from you. You can follow along at Broken Coastal on Instagram and YouTube. Subscribe to my newsletter, a weekly dose of inspiration at the intersection of design and the outdoors. I think you'll love it. Thanks for being here. Cheers.